Alrighty, welcome. We are live. My name is Brendon, and I am with Sterling today, and we have a great episode for you guys this week. We are going to be talking about, obviously, what happened back in the wild card this week, and we are going to be talking about the playoffs moving into this week. And also, we have a nice special treat where I have created a mock draft. This is my first one of the year, and we are going to be taking a look at that. So, Sterling, obviously, let's get right into the painful part of your weekend here, where we got to see your Steelers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I kind of want to know your down low on that one.
Well, I mean, it pretty much went as I expected. The Steelers going into the playoffs were the worst team to make the playoffs easily. We had the worst rush defense and not a very good offense going in. So I didn't really expect us to win. I was hopeful, as you all know, being a Steelers fan, I'm going to cheer for them. And I mean, we've pulled off upsets bigger than that before. So there was always an opportunity, but the score was pretty much what I thought it would be. I figured they would double us up. Um, I didn't think it would be 42. I was thinking more along the lines of like 30 to 18, somewhere in there. But yeah, it's pretty much what I expected to happen. They had it locked down for the first, uh, I want to say like 18 minutes of the game, 20 minutes of the game. First quarter they were solid. They were just putting the ball back and forth essentially. A couple of turnovers. Second quarter started well, and then I don't know what happened. Honestly, I think it was the defense was spending way too much time on the field. The offense couldn't even get some first downs to give those guys some rest, and they started getting tired before halftime even hit, and that was when Mahomes just started running the ball around on them, and that was the downfall. Like they got to find a way to move the ball a little more. If even on three of those drives in the first quarter, they could have gotten a first down or two first downs before punting it away. That I think would have made a massive difference, and we would have gone into halftime at that point tied. And going into halftime tied with the Chiefs in the playoffs, I think the Steelers would have been able to make the appropriate adjustments and pull out a win there. But too much time on the field for the defense. Those guys were just getting exhausted before halftime even hit, and you could see it. So,
Yeah,
not really surprised.
yeah. I when watching that game, you could just tell early on the Steelers defense was really working hard. They were for the most part handling the defense. They looked good. They looked like they could continue with whatever they wanted to do. And then, the offense, it just seemed like it was three and out, three and out, three and out, and it just couldn't get anything moving. And as someone who has watched a phenomenal defense with a horrific offense for the last God knows how many years, you just look at that and you go, yep, yeah. At some point, the boys just quit, and when Mahomes started to really get that momentum going, it really truly showed that the Steelers defense, they were like, well, if our offense is going to constantly go three and out, there's no way that we are going to be able to win this game. If they drop 42 on us, well, we were supposed to be the worst team going into the playoffs this year anyways, so it's unfortunate to see, but
Yeah.
it really wasn't terribly unexpected.
No, though even there, I didn't really see the defense give up at any point.
No,
If
they
anything,
definitely
it
didn't
was
give
just
up.
exhaustion setting in.
Yeah.
Like you could see that those first few drives, like they were hitting that offensive line hard. They were coming in fast. They were making those plays on the receivers. It just after so many times running back and forth, you start to get worn out.
Oh, for
And
sure,
you
for
could
sure.
see those guys were starting to lose a step, and that's all it took for guys like Travis Kelsey, Tyreek Hill to start getting open.
Yep. And it also really hurts your edge rushers too when they have to constantly be going. For instance, TJ Watt, obviously he's the defensive player of the year, and he's easily one of the best defensemen in the NFL. And if he has to rush that much, he's gonna get exhausted. By the third quarter, he probably rushed more in that particular game alone than he had, let's say, in the weeks prior. You,
Yeah.
you know And it's really, really tough for a guy like that when he has to do just basically everything on the rushing side, and he can't get to him after a certain while. He's gonna get exhausted, like what you're saying. He's gonna lose
Yep.
that step, and then when TJ isn't on his best, the Steelers' defense isn't on their best. And again,
No.
like what you said, that is all due to fatigue. It's not like TJ was playing a bad game or anything.
No, that and the run game too. I honestly, I was really hopeful when TJ knocked that pass up in the air and Devin Bush came down with it. I was really hoping that that was going to be the confidence boost for Bush, and we were going to see the run game finally get shut down because that's what Devin Bush is in the middle there. He's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be the guy stopping those runners when they get through the line. But it didn't happen.
No,
But I mean, hey, the Watt brothers had a good game, so.
true that
You
they
know,
did.
TJ returned a fumble for a touchdown, got a sack in there. You know, almost he assisted on that interception, so he had a good game.
Yeah. Now, kind of moving over away because obviously that game was just an utter blowout. It was.
Many
I
of
won't.
them were this weekend.
There were.
Yeah.
Another one that I want to jump into, still sticking with the AFC. This is one that you and I got completely wrong. We were so far off the mark in what we said,
Right.
and that was the Bills and Patriots. We both looked at this game and said, you know what? Going into this week, the Bills and Patriots have played twice. They are 1-1 against each other. This is going to be the rubber match. We saw the Patriots completely decimate the Buffalo Bills the first time they played with just a run game. We said Bill Belichick knows how to beat them. The second game, the reason they lost was Bill was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try a bunch of stuff. And at one point, we were like, this could easily be a blowout for the Patriots. This could be a shutout even.
Yep.
And yeah, Josh Allen said no, no. We're going to score on essentially every single one of our possessions, and we all looked at Bill Belichick going, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
are you gonna start to turn this around at some point?"
It made me feel like Josh Allen just turned on Madden mode. You know, it was honestly it was like watching when you and I play Madden against each other. You know, it's
Yep.
just like just dominant drives down the field over and over.
Yeah. It, you know what this really felt like? It felt like the last 20 years of just getting absolutely beaten down and destroyed, and finally all that rage and energy just comes out all in one big game, and we're all just kind of looking at the Bills going like, "Oh, okay. Okay, you needed to get that one out of your system, guys.
Yeah.
Proud of you for getting that one out of your system, but god damn,
That being
could
said,
you?"
though, honestly, I think that game and the way it played out, it honestly benefits the Patriots more than it benefits the Bills
Without a
because the
doubt.
Bills are going to go into this weekend with an inflated sense of ability and think that they're going to be able to do the same thing against the Chiefs, which maybe you can put up 42, but Pat Mahomes could put up 50.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the Patriots, honestly, it almost felt like Bill Belichick was trying to give a little more control to Mac Jones and to the players because there's a lot of youth on that team that doesn't have playoff experience.
Yep.
And it's like he looked at it and was like, you know what? I'm going to get you guys that experience and let you feel what this is like so that when we are back here next year, you have zero desire to even have a chance at losing. They're going to be a
Exactly.
scary team next year.
They are. And looking at the Patriots, obviously they're going to have a top 20 pick going into next year's draft, which, knowing Bill Belichick, he's going to draft someone who is kind of, you didn't really expect him to draft and go, okay, well, apparently this guy's going to be a star. And they
Do they
are
have
going
top 20? I thought they had the 21st pick.
to, again, we're going to see in a
Yeah.
little bit later, but I think they have a top 20, but I don't fully remember at the moment.
Yeah,
But
because I think they're picking one spot behind the Steelers, and Pittsburgh's got 20, as far as I recall.
okay. Well, again, we'll see later, but still,
Yep.
even a top 25 pick for the Patriots is still a very scary, scary thing. And like what you're saying, they are a young team. They're only going to be more scary next year.
Yeah.
And which is a terrifying thought because after Brady left, we saw how bad they were last year. We're all like, yay, finally, the Patriots
Right.
dynasty's over. And then they're just like, no, we just took a year off.
But again, the Patriots lost, so back to the Bills. That was an impressive win for them. You know,
Yep.
hats off to them. And it really sets up the possibility for a phenomenal Sunday finisher to the divisional round. Like, We could see a massive shootout. We could see a record number of points scored in a playoff game. I
Oh,
think with
without a doubt.
Mahomes
Without a
and
doubt.
Allen, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I feel
Um,
really bad for both those defenses.
that is going to be a nightmare game to watch. But the Bills do have a good defense, but it's Patrick Mahomes, and again, it's just one of those things. Even the Steelers, they have a good defense, but if your offense can't do anything, we saw what the Steelers, but the Bills defense can definitely do things. So again, this is going to be a phenomenal game to watch.
Yeah.
So moving over to the NFC, I want to talk about the Rams and the Cardinals because again, this was still kind of one of those more blowout games. The Rams, they wanted it more, and one of the things I know you and I mentioned when we were talking about this game last week was if Sean McVay, the way the Cardinals win this game is that they can get Sean McVay's game plan not to work, because we've both said that Sean McVay, when he is coaching, he can plan a phenomenal game plan. He's amazing at game planning for a game, but when it's in the game, he starts to fall away and kind of back up a little bit, and he can't really move away from it. He doesn't adjust well to the game.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals didn't get him off his game plan. And when his game plan is working, that team is very, very scary. And yeah, the Rams really just took it to the Cardinals.
They did, and honestly, they it should have been much closer than that. But Kyler Murray just he had a very off game. He's been so good at protecting the ball all season, and no touchdowns and 2 picks. Like
Yeah.
that's not like him this season. Though I was looking at a stat, and it's pretty typical of Cliff Kingsbury. He'll start a season hot, go 7-0, 6-1, and then just completely tanks the back half of the year.
Yeah, I think I saw that as well. Someone posted a picture of all the seasons, even going back to the Texas Tech days, where it's just the beginning
With
of the
Pat
year
Mahomes at
with
that,
Patrick
like he had
Mahomes.
Mahomes as his quarterback during that time.
Yeah, and like what you're saying, he starts the season off phenomenal, and then the second half of the season, it just completely tanks. And that could be a discussion for next year with Kingsbury. Obviously, if they start the season off really, really well but finish poorly, the Cardinals seriously need to make a decision and go, do we want this constant being good at the start and then falling back, or do we decide to move on, which
Right?
is a
It's almost
serious
like
conversation.
he's really good at getting the team fired up and committed to the game plan and going strong, and they come out hot at the start of the season. It's almost like he has trouble maintaining that emotion and that drive throughout
Yeah.
the season. And then once we get past that midway point, it's almost like the players stop believing only because he's maybe not pushing it as hard. Maybe he's like, oh yeah, we're good, we're winning, you guys do your thing, when he needs to be stepping up and being a coach still, and still practicing the fundamentals, not worrying so much about whether they're having fun in practice and fun, on the field. It's a sport.
Yep.
Like
At
these
the
guys
end
are
of the day.
getting exactly. You're playing to win a championship. You're not
Yep.
playing to have fun. I
And
mean, you want to have fun doing what you do, obviously.
oh, for sure. But at the end of the day, we always say like, oh, you want to have fun with what you're doing. But to me, the most fun that I could have is winning a championship. I don't care if it was a shitty year. You just listen to a bunch of former Patriots players. They go, yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun playing for Belichick. It never will. It never is. It never was. It never will be. But at the end of the day, the results are there,
Yep,
and
exactly.
that speaks for itself.
Yep. And honestly, I think that's part of what's happened with Mike Tomlin over the last couple of seasons is he's regressed from being that hard ass, fresh out of, you know, college like coach who's just tough on the players because he's one of them. And as he's gotten older, it's like he's gotten a little softer, and he's like, yeah, these young kids, well, let's get them some music, let's let them have fun on Twitter.
Yep.
It's like, no, man, you gotta start cracking down on that shit, and get these guys to nose to the grindstone.
Yeah. Next game I want to talk about is the Bucks and Eagles. This was one of those games where you just kind of looked at and you felt bad for the Eagles because they were winless against playoff teams when they played them throughout the regular season, but when they weren't playing playoff teams, they were almost undefeated in that statistic. And going up against the Buccaneers was just a nightmare matchup for them. Even with the Bucks players dropping like flies in that game, it felt like they were still just dominant and unbeatable, it looked like. And they really, really were just the better
Well,
team.
31-0 up until the fourth quarter. They were just destroying them.
Yep.
Which, I mean, we discussed last week, and that game pretty much went the way we thought it would.
Yep.
You know, that's how we thought the Patriots game would go. We figured Bill Belichick would have the same ability, but no. I mean, Tom Brady being on the field, he has a little more control of the game.
Exactly. And you just look at Tom Brady and go, he's the GOAT for a reason. He might not be elite at anything, or he might not be the best player at any particular category. Like, you look at arm strength, there's Patrick Mahomes. You'll look at being able to read a defense, you'll say Peyton Manning was always better than him. But the one thing that you can never take away from Tom Brady is his clutch factor. He's the best at that for a reason. And he didn't even necessarily need to be clutch in this game, but you know what, he was. And you kind of feel bad for the Eagles in a sense, because they really had the kind of Goliath story, or Jacob and Goliath. I think that's the old story.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of felt similar to Pittsburgh coming into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were that big underdog coming in that everybody kind of discounted, but hey, maybe if they get rolling, they could do it. And honestly, they kind of went out the exact same way as Pittsburgh did.
Yep.
Just completely flat through the beginning of the game, and then got a little bit going near the end, but it was never going to be enough.
No, I agree with you there. And then
There was a lot of dysfunction within that organization this year too, with all the drama and controversy around Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
So,
which they have come out and which they have stated Jalen Hurts moving forward is going to be their quarterback. Which I look at that and I go, you need to make that decision, because you drafted the kid in the second round the year before. You don't draft a quarterback in the second round without having the plan of him being your starting quarterback and your future.
Right? Yeah, that organization needs to get on the same page through management and the coaching staff and everything. They need to figure it out. I mean, hell, if they don't want Jalen Hurts, I'm sure Pittsburgh will take him.
Yeah. If the Philadelphia Eagles draft a quarterback in the first round this year, if I'm Jalen Hurts, I'm saying, well, I'm not playing for you guys. Get me a trade. And there are going to be teams lining up. For instance, you have Washington, you have Pittsburgh. Just think about Denver, even Houston would call. There's so many teams that would be calling for that kid.
Oh, yes.
Now, taking a look here at which honestly I thought was a lot better of a game than I expected coming in, was the Cowboys and 49ers. To me, I initially went into that game going, you know what, like, this is going to be a good game, but it was better than even I thought it was going to be at the end of it. Obviously, the Cowboys ended up losing, but I don't think any of us didn't think that was going to happen. Even
100% their own fault, that loss, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't see anywhere it being written whether that was the head coach that made that decision or whether it was Dak Prescott.
It was
to
McCarthy.
Run the ball. It was McCarthy. That bonehead play.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not surprising it's McCarthy. He does that near the end of the game. He's not a very good game manager when it comes to inside the 2 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and even after the game, McCarthy went out and said, he's like, you know what? If we had to call that play over again, I'm 100% calling the play over again, because it was the right play. And I'm going, you don't have any timeouts. There's only 14 seconds left on the clock. Yes, running the ball to get yourself some guaranteed yards is a decent thing, but you have 14 seconds. You might as well throw the ball downfield, because you're risking having potentially two plays that you can run Hail Marys on, to the potential of not being able to run that play or run that Hail Mary with closer yardage. Like, I understand it's easier to throw a 25-yard touchdown pass as opposed to a 45-yard, but again, if you had a timeout, that would make total sense. But people want to say, oh, it was the ref's fault, but
no,
you gotta in Dak Prescott's case, look at that and go, you need to find the ref, give him the ball. And even then, I don't even know if they would have had enough time to spike it.
They would have. 100% they would have. I've watched that play over, and honestly, it was Dak Prescott's fault. He got down and he hands the ball to his center.
Yeah, which you
And it's
can't
like,
do.
man, this is football 101. The ref has to touch the ball before the play can initiate.
Hmm.
You hand that ball to the ref, and then you guys line up. You let him put that ball down, and then you snap it. And they would have had time to. It probably only would have been 2 seconds left, but it would have been enough for one chance at the end zone
Yep.
and a game-winning touchdown. They were only down by 6. Touchdown and an extra point, you win it.
Yeah,
But
that is very true.
I saw some funny memes though that was the best that the Dallas offensive line blocked all game, blocking that ref out from being able to get to the ball because he was trying. That
He
ref was
was.
trying as
Yep.
hard as he could to get Dallas that extra play in there, but he could
He
not
really
get through
was.
the linemen. They had blocked him off completely, and it's like, come on, you guys.
Yeah.
Learn the game. This isn't week 2 of preseason. This is wild card weekend.
And it's not like you're looking at Prescott and saying this quarterback, he's young, like he doesn't necessarily have this experience. Well, this is now his either third or fourth playoff appearance with the Cowboys. He's been in the league for 6 years. Like he should know this. It's not like he's never been in a game where he's trying to get the ball down and spike it at the end of the game. So this should be a situation that he does know that he should be, giving the ball to the ref.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, give him credit. Like adrenaline's going in that moment. You got little time left on the clock. You're trying to win the game. I get mistakes will happen, and that's all this was. But he has to do better. If he wants to win a championship, he has to do better.
And Troy Aikman actually came out with a statement yesterday that I looked at that was really good. He goes, "It doesn't matter what you do throughout the regular season. If you make it to the playoffs and do nothing, you essentially are in the same exact boat as the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions and the New York Jets, because they didn't make it either." And I looked at that and I went, you know what? Aikman, that is probably one of the best things you've said in a long time in regarding football, because it's very true.
Right.
If you go out there and you just constantly have year after year after year of getting one and done in the playoffs, does that really make you that much better of a football team or an organization as those Detroit Lions, Cincinnati Bengals, before you've going into last week, just these organizations that can't do anything? Because yeah, it's great making it to the playoffs. Look, I'm moving it a little bit more over to the hockey side of things, but you have the Detroit Red Wings for the 25 years that they went to the playoffs. They said all you need to do is get to the playoffs, then anything can happen. But it's once you're there, it's really making that decision of how can we actually properly do something. And the Cowboys just don't do it. We always have that joke of the Cowboys are going to be one and done. Reason being because it happens every single year.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, the last few years, my Pittsburgh Steelers are starting to gain that reputation as well. They're going to have to do something in the locker room and turn that around also.
Yeah. Well, leaving the Dallas Cowboys and it being a lot better of a game than what we thought, but ended in some pretty big controversy. I want to talk about
it went pretty much the way I thought. I thought the Niners were going to take that. I figured Jimmy G would do a little more than he did. I didn't expect him to throw no touchdowns, but he managed the game very well. He managed the game like a Bill Belichick quarterback would.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about the first playoff game that actually happened throughout this playoffs, and we both said was going to be the best game of the weekend, and let's be honest, it was the best game. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Las Vegas Raiders. To me, there was that one controversial bit, but honestly, it was still a phenomenal game of football to watch.
It was. Yeah, both teams played well. I just, like many others, was a little disappointed in how much airtime the refs decided to take for themselves.
Exactly.
And obviously the NFL was also, since they essentially told them to go home and you're not refereeing any more games this playoff season.
Yep.
So the NFL's in agreement on that one, that there were some mistakes made. I don't think necessarily that the play calls changed the outcome. I think the Bengals still were going to take that game. But I think it would have been a little higher scoring if the referees hadn't stuck their noses in so much.
Yeah, well, particularly on that one touchdown pass where, by the word of the law in the rules, if the whistle is blown while the ball is in the air, it's called dead.
Yeah.
And yeah, Joe Burrow was getting really close to the sidelines when he threw that pass, but to me, I don't really think there should have been a whistle blown at any point. Yeah, it was
No.
close, but there are times where I've seen quarterbacks step out of bounds, throw the ball after, and the whistle doesn't come for another 5 seconds after the catch is made.
Well, exactly. Like I don't understand why they whistled that down so early.
No.
And then going back and seeing how far he was from still being out of bounds.
Yeah.
Like that just it felt a little suspicious because you saw those Raiders players in the end zone sort of let up a little bit. I don't necessarily think they could have stopped that touchdown from happening, but maybe one of them lays out and gets a hand in there and is able to knock that ball away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's disappointing that the refs would pull something like that.
Yeah. Again, like what you said earlier, I don't really think any of these calls really would have changed the outcome of the game. I still think it would have, at the end of the day, been a Bengals win. And
Hmm.
I'm really, really happy for Bengals fans because obviously this has been their first playoff win in over 30 years. And to
Yeah.
go out and do it in a fashion like that, when you're going up against a team that had nothing to lose in the Raiders, they have an interim head coach, but they had a lot of fight in them. That's the thing that the Raiders had, is that they came off of that big win in week 18 that had a lot of momentum pushing them forward. And there was some question marks of what Cincinnati Bengal team are we going to see? Are we going to see that just unbelievable playoff caliber Super Bowl frankly winning team that we've seen the last couple of weeks, or are we going to see one of those teams where you look at the Bengals and go, they're kind of up and down sometimes. It's like a roller coaster with the Bengals.
Yeah.
They're up and then they're down, they go back to up, and you know what? We didn't see them go down. They played lights out.
Yep, they really did. And fun fact, I didn't realize that the last time they won a game, back in 1991, I believe,
Yep.
it was also against the Raiders.
Really?
That was the last time they won a playoff game was against the Raiders.
Wow.
And so now they've got to come out and prove that they can win a playoff game against a team other than the Raiders.
Yes. Yes, that is big, that is key. And boy, do they have a monumental task going into this
Do
week.
they ever? But we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So moving over, this is something that I like to do for myself. I've been scouting players in the college game for the last 6-7 years. I always like to do a mock draft, and since we are here on the podcast, we are going to do my mock draft for the first official one of the year. Sterling, you have not seen any of these, but yeah, this is going to be interesting. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of necessarily surprises, but it'll be interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm sure I will have some argumentative points depending on who you've got my Pittsburgh Steelers taking.
yeah, very interested to see actually who you or what your agreements is on, or what your kind of thoughts are the player that is. But I'm gonna get
Well,
that set
I
up
mean,
here.
you and I have similar mentalities when it comes to drafting. I'm by no means a scout or anything like that, and the most I've gotten into recently is, playing Madden and doing drafts on there, and we all know the scouting system on there is pretty abysmal most of the time, but I like to fancy myself a guy who does his research when it comes to figuring out who should be drafted where.
Yep.
And I'm one of these believers. All teams go into the offseason and into the draft with one glaring hole in mind. And what I find a lot with these teams is the ones that are not successful are the ones that tunnel vision on that need.
Mm-hmm.
A team will go into the draft and they're like, "Oh, we need a quarterback."
Yep.
So instead, when their pick comes up, instead of going for the guy who's going to improve their team the best at that moment, they go for filling that hole. And oftentimes, I find that doesn't work for a lot of teams. And then you've got good teams that have good scouting systems, like Pittsburgh, New England, Tennessee is really good at it as well, where they go in and they're like, okay, this is where our glaring hole is, but we also need to work on this and we need to work on this. And so oftentimes you'll see a team go in like Pittsburgh where everybody's like, yeah, they need to take a quarterback. Like the last 5 years, people have been saying that they need to take a quarterback. and it gets to their pick and they take a linebacker or they take a cornerback, and everybody's like, what the hell are they doing? But that's because that's their second and their third most important need. And they go right now in the draft, that is the best player available at the position that's going to improve our team. And
For
that's
sure.
why you see teams like that always picking in the back half of the draft, because they build teams every year that are making it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
When you're picking in the top 15, yes, best player available is usually the best way to go about it. We don't necessarily need that spot, but he's the best guy available, head and shoulders above the rest. We need to take him. Once you get outside that top 15, that's when you really need to start focusing more on your team and your team's needs, not so much who's best right now.
Well, see, for me, in my philosophy, when I look at the first round, particularly the first round, it has always been you need to focus on the best player available. And, obviously that doesn't happen. There are situations when it goes, I have a glaring need at left tackle. And there's this left tackle. He's our second on the draft board, but, our number one guy on our draft board right now is a corner. And there are situations like that, but I do think when it comes to drafting, you need to always look at who is the best player available at that time and at that situation, because you would much rather go for a guy like Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald for a guy, let's say like Vernon Hargrave.
Yeah.
Just because you had a need at corner does not mean you overlook some of these generational guys and go, you know what, like, yeah, I might be, reaching for that for that Aaron Donald, but at the same point, he's the better player as opposed to going after a need. But yeah, I
just feel like some teams get into that tunnel vision where like that a team like, I'm just going to use them as an example, your Bears.
Yep.
You've got a guy like Khalil Mack. So you guys are going into the draft and someone like TJ Watt is the next best available guy. It's like, well, we've already got one of the best players at that position already. Do we really need to spend that draft pick on this guy? And then we have some arguments in the locker room who's the number one guy, and you start getting that dysfunction in the locker room because of it. And so I feel like some teams get that tunnel vision too much on the best player rather than the best fit for their team. Yep. And that's why you see teams like the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets, they're always taking that best player, but it's not the best fit for what they need right now to build a playoff caliber team.
Yeah, it's trying to find the balance between the best player available and what you need.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like there's only about half a dozen teams in the NFL that are capable of doing that.
Yep. You see it every year. So moving in, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. There is 3 players that I could see them taking with this first overall pick. I'm not going to shock anyone here. It is Aiden Hutchinson, edge rusher out of Michigan. Again, the 2 other players are Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher out of Oregon, and Evan Neal, a tackle from Alabama. If one of those guys gets selected with this first overall pick with the Jaguars, they are winning. They take Thibodeau, you know what? They have an amazing edge rusher. If they take Neal, they have an amazing tackle that they can use to protect Trevor Lawrence. Regardless, the Jaguars physically should not be able to screw this pick up. They should not be able to, but this is also the Jaguars organization. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, the defensive side is the smarter way to go about it for them. Like I understand getting more protection for Trevor Lawrence, but you've got the cornerstone of your offense. You need to go get the cornerstone of that defense now. And then maybe not this coming season, but in 2 or 3 years, you will be dominating that AFC South.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now moving over to the second overall pick with the Detroit Lions. Again, this is not going to come as a shock to anyone. They take Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher out of Oregon. The way that I look at this, the Lions, if they really are just waiting to see what Jacksonville does. If the Jags take Thibodeau, they're taking Hutchinson. If the Jags Like in my take Hutchinson, they're going to take Thibodeau. Or for instance, if the Jags take Neal, they're just going to be like, oh, who do we pick? They really are going to be a kid in a candy shop. The Lions should not be able to screw this pick up because the top three players necessarily in this draft are all so talented, and it's hard. It's hard to look at them and go, they're gonna mess this up.
Exactly. I mean, we all know who the top three are, and those three guys are going one, two, three. It's just a question of what order they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree. I think the edge rushers are going 1-2 with that tackle going off third.
Yeah. And speaking of third overall, we have the Houston Texans. Again, not a big shock here. I have them selecting Evan Neal, tackle out of Alabama. I don't care who is going to be playing quarterback for the Texans next year, whether that is Deshaun Watson, whether that is Davis Mills, or someone else who they bring in. Having a franchise tackle, whether that's left or right, it is so important to have. It is just next level of what they need. And again, doesn't matter who's behind there, you need to protect them. And plus, the benefit of you can get this guy who can run block as well as opposed to pass block. He is just that franchise defining tackle. He can play left, he can play right. I view him as a left tackle in this draft. But yeah, he's going to be a good player for a long, long time.
Yeah, I feel bad for him if that's where he lands, only because, a franchise player like that going to a franchise that's barely good at anything. I mean, honestly, the Texans have become the new ground for where young players' careers go to die.
I haven't I haven't quite given them that spot yet because we do see the Detroit Lions, and I have them picking Thibodeau. Again, we could see him have a Hall of Fame type career, but just it be only for like 6 years because I'm not gonna clearly do anything with this, so I'm just gonna retire like we saw with Barry Sanders, like we saw with Megatron, where they just retire early because they're like, there's just no point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just getting beat up for no reason at this point. I'm here to win a championship, and this team's not going to do it for me.
Exactly. So moving over fourth overall, we have the New York Jets. I have them taking Akeem Awanu, tackle out of NC State. This kid throughout the entire year has been pushing for that number one tackle spot. Even he's been getting people to say that he might be a better tackle than Neal. I still have him as my number two, but the reason that I'm having the Jets take him right here with their first of 2 first-round picks, you drafted Zach Wilson last year. You go out and get him protection. Some people might say, well, the Bengals didn't do that last year with Joe Burrow, and that worked out. That was a very, very special case because Burrow and Chase had that chemistry from college. Wilson doesn't have anyone who is going to be that elite. There's no wide receiver that is going to be that superstar elite player like we saw with Chase this year. To me, this is just the smartest pick. You shore up that offensive line and you get this young man some protection.
100%. And that's one of the differences too with the Bengals to the Jets is the Bengals have a run game. They already had a run game established, so it's not just about bringing in somebody that Joe Burrow could throw to. It was finding a different dynamic for that offense. Whereas the Jets, they've pretty much got nothing already. So you need to get that offensive line going to the point where you can establish a run game, which will create more success for Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Mixon running all over the place for the Bengals is what really opened up so many opportunities for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Yep. So moving over to the New York Giants, for me, this is what I would consider my first shocker of this draft. It's not really a shocker to me, but it might be for you. I have them selecting Tyler Linderbaum, center out of Iowa. The reason I have him selected here is Tyler Linderbaum. He is the best offensive lineman in this draft. Without a shred of a doubt, he's the best offensive lineman in this draft. But he plays center. Centers do not get picked this high. It is very rare that you'll see an offensive lineman be picked in the top 5, not be a tackle. We've seen it. The last time we really saw a player not be a tackle get picked this high was Quentin Nelson.
Yeah.
And obviously he played guard. When I look at Lindenbaum, he can play guard, he can play center. You put him on that interior of the offensive line, you are going to be you're going to be in very good hands. And whoever is the quarterback for the Giants next year, whether that's Daniel Jones, whether that's a kid that they draft or a free agent that they bring in, they are going to be ecstatic to see this guy get drafted because he could be that Quentin Nelson type of player up in front.
Well, exactly, and that's what the Giants need. They need that ability to open up some holes in the middle for Saquon Barkley as well as protecting Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that would be a good pick for them. I agree. You know, and it's fun to see how the trends change because what's happened in the last 5-6 years is we're getting all these edge rushers, and that edge rush is becoming a big thing, and that's why you start seeing those tackles have greater and greater value. Whereas 15 years ago, when it was all about the pocket passing and there wasn't a lot of edge rush, it was all defensive tackles coming in. You saw more of those guards and those centers going earlier in the draft than the tackles, unless it was that blindside tackle. That has
Yeah.
always been the most valuable position on that O line.
Yeah. And I really do look at Lindenbaum as being the best offensive lineman. Again, he just plays center. So that's where he kind of falls back. I think he's a better offensive lineman than Neal. I think he's better than Equa.
Hey, a
It's
lot of people overlook that center position, but depending on your play scheme, if you're running a lot of shotgun, you need a center that has very secure hands
mhm.
because you see some of these guys that snap the ball too high, and it can destroy a quarterback.
Yep. Yep. So moving to the sixth overall pick, I've been saying all year that quarterback there's no quarterback worth being really a top 10 pick, but I do have the Panthers selecting Kenny Pickett, quarterback out of Pittsburgh. Matt Rule, Matt Rule, he is on the hot seat entering his third year. Ownership for the Panthers has come out and stated, you know what, they are actually a little bit disappointed in the contract length that they gave Rule because of just the underperformance that the team has had. And I think for Rule, the biggest thing is that he just hasn't been able to get that quarterback position right. And so for him, he's going to be desperate to get that guy that he can develop. And I really do look at Pickett being the best quarterback in this draft. I know there are some people that say Matt Corral is the best, but to me, I do look at Pickett and say he just kind of stands out just a little bit more for me. I think he's a little bit more ready. And
His
Carolina
football sense
needs a
is just a
quarterback.
little bit higher than those other guys.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you just look at Carolina. This is going to be a pick for Rule more than anyone. He's trying to save his job, and if he can convince the organization after next year, it's like, hey, look, Pickett, he improved a lot this year. The team was better this year. You need to keep me on because we can continue forward. To me, this really is a pick of Matt Rule trying to cool his seat off. And honestly, it is not a bad pick either because they do need a quarterback,
Yep.
and this is the best available quarterback.
That's true. And I mean, yeah, I'd say good pick for the Panthers. I don't think it'll save Rule's job because as good as he is, he's not going to turn that team around in one season or 2 seasons. Like Kenny Pickett is a 3 or 4 year guy, and he's the best quarterback available in this draft. So I
Again,
think Rule's still going to be out in Carolina.
with this pick, though, it really is just Rule trying to cool his seat off at the end of the
It
day.
is, yeah. Yeah.
So with the second pick for the New York Giants, this was the pick that they acquired last year in the trade with the Chicago Bears for the Bears to move up to select Justin Fields. But I have them taking, honestly, what might be the best defensive player in the secondary for this draft, Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. He should not be picked seventh overall. He should be a top five guy any draft. He's one of the best safety prospects that has come out of the draft in a very long time. And the Giants, obviously, they found their superstar offensive lineman. Now they find their superstar safety, and he's going to instantly help out that secondary.
Yeah, that's a smart pick for the Giants for sure. They need to shore up that defensive secondary.
Yeah, and that pick really boils down to this is the best player available. You
Yeah.
cannot pass up on this prospect. And the Atlanta Falcons right now are sitting here, they are just foaming at the mouth because I have them selecting Derek Stingley Jr. corner out of LSU. Again, this is a guy that should be a top 5 pick. Without a doubt, with no questions about it, he should be a top 5 pick. When he came into LSU, Joe Burrow was still the quarterback. First week of practice, he said, "You know what? We are not throwing the ball over to Stingley's side because he is that good." He was the number one recruit coming out of high school into college, and he's just been a superstar every single year he has been at LSU. And plus, they have AJ Terrell, who played really good. He played really good this year, and adding Stingley on the opposite side of him, that is going to make the Falcons have a terrifying secondary just because you're not going to be able to throw.
Right? Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the Falcons will win some games because they won't have to score as much because they can't.
Yeah, yeah. I know this is an opportunity for the Falcons to potentially go get one of these quarterbacks to move on from Matty Ice. I just do struggle with that. But
Yeah, I don't think they do that yet.
yeah. Moving over to the Denver Donkey Broncos. This is one of those picks where I made it just because of they don't have anything moving forward. I know there's a lot of rumors going around, but right now, looking at the situation, I'm not going to count on a rumor. I have them selecting Matt Corral, quarterback out of Ole Miss, 9th overall. We want to talk about the Broncos getting Aaron Rodgers, getting Russell Wilson. But the matter of the fact is, right now, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to leave. We don't know if Russell Wilson is going to leave. It's likely that they are going to, but at the moment, they don't have a quarterback. I don't think any of these other free agent quarterbacks coming in are going to be solutions. Plus, whoever Denver decides to hire, they are without a doubt going to want to bring in their own guy. If they can get an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson, they're going to be like, yes, A+. But for the moment, they do not have their guy. Matt Corral, he's coming off an injury from that bowl game, but he's still one of those top options where you could intertwine or interchange him with Pickett for that number one quarterback spot. But for the moment, I really do just look at the Broncos and say, what is their number one need? It's quarterback, and we can't fully trust that one of these star quarterbacks is going to move over to the Denver Broncos. Again, I do not think this is likely, and this is one of those picks I look at and I go, this is unlikely to happen, but we're looking at it right now at this current moment.
That's just it. And, this 9th pick with the Broncos, it's one of the more difficult ones to predict right now because there are so many questions within the Broncos organization. First and foremost, they need to figure out who their coach is going to be, and then they need to figure out the direction their team's going to go. So, yeah, this is probably the first pick out of all of them that I think we will see change as the Denver Broncos start to build their team towards the draft.
Exactly.
Because if they get the coach they want and they manage to get the quarterback they want, then obviously they don't draft a quarterback.
And for me, at the end of the day, it really was just looking at it going, we don't know where the Broncos are going moving forward.
Yeah.
This has to be the pick right now.
Oh, exactly. Too many questions surrounding the organization right now. So it's just, okay, best player available. That's who the Broncos are going to take at that spot.
It's not even necessarily best player available. This was a team that they are built fairly well. It's just that they need a quarterback that they can rely on, and the guys that they have right now, they can't rely on.
Fair, yes.
So with the second pick for the New York Jets, this was the pick that they acquired in the Jamal Adams trade in Seattle. I have them selecting Andrew Booth Jr., corner out of Clemson. This is a kid who is just phenomenal. He was phenomenal for Clemson this year. He has superstar written all over him, and you need to kind of help solidify that back end. I don't really look at any of the other tackles or offensive linemen currently at this point in the draft being moved to the Jets. There's no real wide receivers that I have value. I like the value here. I think this is the best player available at this current time for the Jets. And plus, it's never a bad thing to get an extra corner to be quality for you. And this could easily help their secondary. And if you have a guy that can go out and get the ball back for Zach Wilson, that is never a bad thing.
That is true, yep.
So the Washington football team, again, this was a tough pick for myself because I'm just looking at the team going, where is the value? And I have them selecting Malik Wills, quarterback out of Liberty. The reason I have them picking Wills is because they need a quarterback. They can't be relying on the guys that they have right now. They have an XFL quarterback being their number one guy, and it's not really working out for him. And with Wills, he has the potential to be the best quarterback in this draft. We could be looking back at this 3 years from now going, wow, Wills went 11. He should have been first overall. Like, we don't care that the Jags had Trevor Lawrence. Like, this kid should have been the first overall pick because of how talented he is. He is really, really raw right now, which is kind of one of those things where people can get a little bit scared off of because he is so raw. But Patrick Mahomes was raw coming into the league too, and look what happened.
Well,
You let this kid sit
the
and
issue,
develop.
though. The Washington football team does not do well with those raw players because they are the organization that drafts and you play day one. Patrick Mahomes is as good as he is because he sat on the bench learning the game for 3 years.
Yeah,
You know,
it's hard to
he
disagree
sat
with
there
that.
learning behind Alex Smith and learning what the NFL game is all about. Wills will not have that opportunity. He'll be playing day one, and I think it'll hurt him, just like it hurt Dwayne Haskins, just like it's hurt every quarterback that's been drafted through the Washington organization.
I hear
But
you. I do.
that is their greatest need, and so that makes sense that that's what they would try to do.
Yep.
I just don't think it'll work for them.
And when I do look at Wills, I do kind of get a little bit of that Cam Newton style of player. And obviously, we've seen Ron Rivera be able to work with a guy like that. And so he knows how to kind of work with an offense with a quarterback similar to this style. So that was another reason why I had Washington here selecting Wills.
That's a fair point. And if Ron Rivera is given the opportunity and the ability to do what he does, then I could be wrong. But if Dan Snyder's got his nose in everything, as he has for years, then it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah. So moving over to the 12th overall pick, we have the Minnesota Vikings, and I have them selecting Roger McCary. I do not know if I'm saying that name right, but he's a corner out of Auburn. The Vikings have a lot of older players for their corner unit. McCary, he is nowhere near the level as Booth or as Stingley, but he is one of those guys that he's going to be reliable. He's going to be exactly where he needs to be. And he's just one of those guys that you look at and he is exactly where he needs to be all the time. For Auburn, he is never the fastest guy. He was never the most athletic guy, but he was where he needed to be. And looking at the Vikings, they could look at him and go, you know what, we have an older secondary. That we don't necessarily need him to be this superstar right now. But you know what? He's going to be good for us. He's going to be consistent. And that's why I have him taken here.
Oh, I'm a little surprised to see you having so many cornerbacks going off the board so early.
This is a really, really good corner draft. It really is.
But there's a lot of good edge rushers too. I expected to see more of those edge rushers going early for you. It's good though. Like I'm enjoying the picks. I'm just that's my comment thus far. There's quite a few secondaries going early in the draft. You don't see that very often.
With the Cleveland Browns, they are picking 13th overall. I have them selecting Nakobe Dean, linebacker out of Georgia. He is just sideline to sideline. He can do it all. He can cover tight ends. He can cover the run. He can blitz if you want him to. And I love having a superstar edge rusher paired with a really, really talented middle linebacker. And if you add Dean to this defense, this is going to help the Browns so much on that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they if they'll bring in another linebacker with Myles Garrett there already.
Well, Garrett is more of the defensive end edge rusher.
True.
And Dean, he is the stand in the middle of the defense, quarterback, that kind of style. And, he covers slot corners, he can cover the tight ends, he can stop the run. This is a guy that I think the Browns are looking at going, like, yeah, we are happy to have him.
They are. This will be the first one I disagree with on, though. I know the Browns organization, and I feel like they tend to knee-jerk reaction. They'll be the first ones to take a wide receiver off the board in the first round.
This is a different
They're going to
Browns
look
team,
at it and go, "Oh, we lost OBJ, and he's doing so well now. We need to get somebody to replace him," and that's what they'll do.
That is a possibility, but that was the Olds Brown regime. This is a new general management staff.
I don't see much new from them.
Well,
they're still finishing fourth in the division every year.
Fair enough. With the 14th pick, the Baltimore Ravens, I have them selecting George Karlaftis, edge rusher out of Purdue. To me, he is the third best edge rusher in this draft class, and if you take out Hutchinson's and Thibodeau, this guy, he's a top 5 pick. But those two guys are there, and pretty much all those picks afterwards, they have needs elsewhere. And I do look at the Ravens. They drafted a kid last year, edge rusher. I don't remember his name, but you add these two guys together, they are going to be a fearsome tandem, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these two guys go after it. I do think Karlaftis is the third best edge rusher in this class, and they will be getting a lot of value out of this pick.
Yeah, I agree. This is what the Ravens are building for right now. They've got to get that front seven of theirs back to that dominant fashion it used to be for those divisional matchups with the Bengals and the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
So that one doesn't surprise me at all.
No. And now we have the first of 3 Philadelphia Eagles picks in the first round. With their first pick, 15th overall, I have them selecting Trayvon Walker, defensive lineman out of Georgia. He is the best D lineman in this class. They need help up front. The Eagles need help at a lot of areas. With their first 2 picks, I literally just looked at the Eagles and said, who are the best players available? They are going to take them, because they have another pick right after this, and I have them selecting Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. This instantly helps their defense right down the middle, getting a stud middle linebacker and a stud defensive lineman, defensive tackle, can kind of play defensive end in a 3-4, but if you play a 4-3, he's going to be inside. But yeah, these two guys instantly help out that Eagles team, who looked really, really good this year, and obviously they made the playoffs, and unfortunately they ran into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just beat them, who we obviously talked about earlier. But these two guys are instantly helping out this Eagles team.
Yeah, those are 2 good picks for the Eagles. They need to shore up their defense, and much like the Ravens, that front 7 especially.
Mm-hmm. So, breaking up the Eagles picks, we now have the Chargers, and I have them selecting Charlie Cross, tackle out of Mississippi State. Obviously, they got an amazing player out of Slater last year. I look at Cross and I go, you know what? You plant him on the opposite side of Slater. You give Justin Herbert all that protection. You cannot go wrong with that. I don't necessarily look at their wide receiver room. I don't go, you know what? They could use another wide receiver. I don't look at their edge rushers and say they need to work on their edge rushers. Same with their corners. I look at this and I go, you know what? You might as well go out and protect your franchise guy. And right now, if you can just add even a little bit more protection for Justin Herbert, that is going to make him even more scarier. This pick isn't sexy. It's not amazing. It's not, blow your pants off, but it's just a good pick for them.
It makes sense for a growing organization that is inching closer and closer to the playoffs and a solid franchise every season.
Yeah. To be honest, the Chargers should have been in the playoffs. But yeah, I really do like this pick, because you'll have Slater and Cross opposite sides, giving the most amount of protection for Herbert. Now we have the New Orleans Saints, and funny enough, I have them taking the first wide receiver off the board, Williams out of Alabama. Again, quarterback is probably their top need. Um, but at this point, I struggle a little bit with who's going to be that guy for them. I don't really see any value at quarterback. They don't really need a whole lot of. They don't really have a whole lot of holes elsewhere. But whoever's going to be their quarterback of the future, this is a guy that they're going to want because he is lights out. And obviously, we saw Alabama when they didn't have him in the national championship game. Their offense just didn't look the same. It just didn't operate that same level that they could. And you know what? For instance, if the Saints do go out and get a guy like Russell Wilson, he will be foaming at the mouth to get a guy like this.
Yeah, that pick makes excellent sense if they get themselves a quarterback. If they don't find a solution at quarterback, then I feel like that would be a wasted pick for them.
It would be, but again, we are sitting back looking at this if they can find themselves a quarterback.
Well, exactly. Because that's the thing with that wide receiver position is like you need targets, you need success, or you're just going to regress.
Mhm.
And if you regress too quickly, then you end up just falling off the map, and it's hard to get back to that elite quality for a wide receiver.
Yeah. So moving back to the Philadelphia Eagles, they now have the 19th pick. I forget. This was actually the Colts pick for Carson Wentz that they traded for. Obviously, the first two, I had them selecting Walker and I don't know why I'm instantly forgetting his name here, but they had D tackle and linebacker. Those were picks of just best player available. I look at this third pick and I go, you know what? Why not splurge a little bit? I have them selecting Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Obviously, this would mean that they are picking a wide receiver in the first round for the third year in a row. Jalen Rager's is not going to be on their team for much longer. He just hasn't produced the way that they want. And this is just giving Jalen Hurts another phenomenal weapon moving forward for that Eagles organization. I have them selecting the two defensive players that are going to help out. Why not splurge and get Jalen Hurts another solid weapon? Nothing to say?
Not
No.
really, no. I mean, the Eagles got to figure out what they want to do at quarterback or at quarterback, because we don't even know if Jalen Hurts is their guy.
No, they've already come out and stated that Jalen Hurts is their guy moving forward.
They are going to stick with him going forward. Okay,
Yep,
okay.
they
Then
have.
yeah, I mean, if they can get him reading his targets a little better, then yeah, that's a good option. But when you only go to the first two options and then you run with it anyway, I mean that third guy getting drafted isn't going to get a lot of targets.
Well, the thing is with Olave, he's not going to be the third guy. He's going to
No.
be their number two, if not their number one. Because Rager, he isn't. He hasn't produced, and I think he instantly gets moved to that third spot.
Okay.
Now it is time for your Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like regardless of what I pick, it might not be what you're happy with, but I have them selecting Kayvon Green, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. This is a guy who can play both center and guard. I don't think he would be able to play tackle. He's definitely your interior guy, but when I look at the Steelers, the quarterbacks that they would choose either in Pickett or Coral are gone. I don't think they'd be interested in Wills even if he was there. This to me just makes a lot more sense for them. Obviously, with Najee Harris, you want to give him the most amount of holes and space out there. And the Steelers, they always just have a solid offensive line, and this is just going to continue to help them moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that will help. I mean, the middle of the offensive line was where we were struggling the most at the end of the season there. And we've got our center. I think Kendrick Green going forward is going to be the guy. He improved a lot over his first season here. And I think he's just going to get better. So having Kenyon Green lining up beside him, either left or right side, is really going to help solidify that pass rush for those quick RPO plays that Matt Canada likes to run.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
And
to me,
that's
this
just it.
just made the most
Green
sense.
is very agile, And that's what we need in an offensive tackle. We need somebody who's going to be versatile, who's going to be able to make cut blocks and move across the line. And Green is that guy. So that's a good pick for them. You know, the only other two I was looking at really in the first round were Kenny Pickett, and then as a dark horse, if he fell far enough, I can't remember his name. That first linebacker you had going off that the Browns took.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I can't remember it off the top of my head either, but yeah.
yeah, that's the dark horse I see the Steelers taking. If there's no offensive tackle and there's no Kenny Pickett and he's still on that board, they will grab that linebacker.
Yeah. So next up, we have the New England Patriots selecting 21st overall, and I have them selecting Jordan Davis, defensive lineman out of Georgia. He was part of that tandem that was just fearsome for the Bulldogs this year. And I look at this and I go, again, it's not the sexiest pick, but the Patriots, they are probably going to go out there and take someone that you don't necessarily expect from them, and this is going to help out their defense. It's going to solidify their inside. Obviously, they took Christian Barrymore, defensive tackle, last year. You pair these two guys up in that for that front seven, it is going to be really, really hard to run against them. And Davis has upside as being able to get after the quarterback as well, so that's just going to help out their defense.
Oh yeah, and that's New England's greatest need is defense.
Mm-hmm.
You know that's what they need to focus on this year in the first probably 3 rounds is really building up that defense.
Yep. So now with the Las Vegas Raiders, I have them selecting corner Kareem Elm out of Florida. They the Raiders unfortunately have lost a lot of their corners this year. This kid, I look at, he's going to be phenomenal upside, and I think this is probably just the safe, smart pick for them to make.
Yeah, I think so. You know, there's been a lot of controversy around the Raiders, and hopefully they're doing their research and their due diligence and finding some of these guys with maybe some better morals, I guess.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, guys that aren't going to be running around brandishing handguns, you know,
And
driving drunk at 120 fucking clicks like morons.
yep. Yep. Yeah.
They
They
need to
really
change their image
they
on
do.
that team.
They do.
So they need to get some good boys in there.
They do. They need people who are willing to go pray with Derek Carr on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep. The Arizona Cardinals, 23rd overall. I have them selecting Traylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. Obviously, they have DeAndre Hopkins, who is one of the best guys out there, but they have a bunch of guys getting ready to go into their contract year. Christian Kirk, he might not be back for him. And this is one of those picks of just kind of seeing where it goes and getting Kyler Murray, another young, really, really talented weapon on the opposite side of DeAndre Hopkins. That could be scary. Burks is a phenomenal, phenomenal wideout. That this could be a really, really good sneaky pick for him.
Yeah, that's a smart pick also because I mean you have DeAndre Hopkins, but he's not young anymore, and he did have some injury troubles this season, and so you know with wideouts that's tough. Once you start getting those injuries, it's hard to get back to that old player you used to be. So we might not see the same DeAndre Hopkins going forward. So having somebody else there to take the pressure off of him, that could
Massive.
rejuvenate him for sure.
Without a doubt. And that just takes the pressure off of him.
Yeah.
So now we have the Dallas Cowboys. I have them selecting Daxton Hill, defensive back out of Michigan. With Daxton Hill, he lined up for Michigan mostly at safety, but this is just one of those picks I look at. You put him at safety, you put him at corner, you put him at nickel or slot. Hell, you could even put him as an outside linebacker. He is just one of those just weapons. Obviously, we saw what happened when they did that last year when they just picked one of those defensive players that is just weapon. It turned out he's going to be the defensive rookie of the year.
Yep.
I think you're going to see Hill mostly being lined up at either nickel or safety, where I think he's going to be best, but realistically going to be safety. But yeah, this is one of those picks I looked at the Cowboys and going, they are really hoping Hill falls to them. And here, I have him taking him.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see Dallas going for more defense this year. Jerry Jones is unpredictable. I could also see him looking at Ezekiel Elliott and going, maybe he's not the guy anymore, and looking at a running back in the first round.
There's just no
They're one of
running
the only
backs.
teams I could see taking a running back in the first round is the Cowboys.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is with this year's draft, there's no real running back worthy of really being taken in the first round.
No, but if anybody would do that, it would be the Cowboys.
Yeah, true, true. So now we are moving on to the teams that aren't really decided. So the way that I chose these next teams is I'm kind of breaking, the teams that I think are going to win this week moving forward. But this is kind of like my playoff prediction for the rest of the year. So I do think the Bengals are ultimately going to end up falling to the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to do a little bit of spoiler alert here moving forward, but I have them 25th overall, selecting Trayvon Penning, tackle out of Northern Iowa. They got their superstar wide receiver last year, passing up on two phenomenal tackles. This year they look at this and go, we're gonna give Burrow a little bit more help up front.
Yeah.
I don't think
that
this
makes
is
sense.
shocking.
Let's let Burrow get hit a little bit less.
Exactly. Give him a little bit more time. Let him make a little bit better decisions in the pocket. Not like he makes bad decisions, but this is just going to give him that extra half a second to, read the field, which he's already elite at.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Detroit Lions, which ultimately they got the LA Rams pick from the Matt Stafford trade. I actually have them losing to whoever they're playing. I forget who they're playing, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I have them selecting Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati. The reason that I have this is because I do not think Jared Goff is a good quarterback. They need to find their guy of the future. Desmond Ridder, I don't think he's really worthy of the 26th overall pick, but I think the Lions are going to splurge and go, you know what? We don't really want to miss out on this kid. We don't want to miss out on a guy that we like. And plus, we can get Ridder to sit back for a year behind Goff and kind of learn the NFL. I'm not saying similar to what Alex Smith did with Patrick Mahomes, but it's one of those things you're just getting to sit back and learn. And if Goff plays just horrifically, you might go, okay, well, it's week 10. Let's put this kid in and see what he has.
Yeah, it makes sense. I could see that. And I'm going to be the controversial. I know you don't like talking about, maybe trades happening in the draft because it's too hard to predict that. But if the Detroit Lions are going to go so far as to reach for this pick, then I see them packaging this pick and Jared Goff to somebody like Washington to move up and get Wills.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
That I think that would be more likely than them reaching for a quarterback late in the first round.
Yeah.
But that being said, this would be a good pick for them because even if Goff is their quarterback of now, I don't see him being there for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, he's the quarterback of today, but he's not the quarterback of tomorrow.
Exactly.
So next up, we have the Buffalo Bills. I do think the Buffalo Bills are going to ultimately fall to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I have them selecting Sauce Gardner, Amon Gardner, whatever you want to call him, corner out of Cincinnati. So we have two Cincinnati players getting picked back to back. Again, the Bills don't really have a whole lot of needs on their team. I have them selecting Gardner because once you get Tre'Davious White back, putting Gardner on the opposite side of them, this is just going to instantly make their already phenomenal defense just that much better.
Yeah. And in the division they're in, that's what they need to focus on. You got Mac Jones, you got Tua Tagovailoa, and you've got the New York Jets that don't matter. But either way, those other two teams, they're both going to be explosive offenses going forward, and you need to shore up that defense.
Exactly.
You can't expect to beat the Patriots 41-17 every time. It's not going to happen.
Nope. And next up, we have the Green Bay Packers. I do think the Packers are ultimately going to lose against the 49ers. I have them selecting Drake London, wide receiver out of USC. Drake London, before he got hurt this year, was one of my favorite players to watch at the wide receiver position. He's 6'5", 210 pounds. And if the Packers ultimately keep Rodgers and Devontae Adams, this is a guy that Rodgers is going to love to throw the ball to. He's just one of those guys that is big, physical. You throw him the ball, he's coming down with it. And if London didn't get hurt, he might have been that first, second wide receiver taken in this year's draft.
Yeah, that's a good pick for them. I don't see both of those guys coming back and playing for Green Bay, so I really see this as being that fill-in for Devontae Adams when he goes to Vegas.
Yeah.
Because I really think Devontae Adams is going to be leaving the Packers, more so than Aaron Rodgers at this point.
Yeah. I hear you, but and even then, if both of those guys do leave, if Jordan Love is your quarterback of the future, getting a guy like this is going to be massive.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, getting a good young prospect at wide receiver is really important for that team right now, because outside of Devontae Adams, they don't have a ton.
Exactly. Yeah. So next up we have the Miami Dolphins with the 29th pick. This is a trade. I forget exactly who this was traded from, but I have the Dolphins selecting Zion Johnson, offensive lineman out of Boston College. They have been trying to get better at the offensive line, but they've just been not exactly getting those picks right the last couple of years. Zion Johnson, to me, you can play him at center, you can play him at guard, you might be able to swing him out at tackle, but he's definitely interior. And he is an absolute mauler. He's going to be one of those guys that if he falls to my Chicago Bears, I'm going to be going, yeah, pick him, get him, go grab him. Because I think he's that valuable. But I think Miami looks at this and goes, you know what? We need to help give Tua as much time as we can. We need to shore up that offensive line. And getting an offensive lineman in the first round, in my opinion, is never a bad thing. You can never have enough phenomenal offensive lineman prospects.
No, I mean, those trenches are important. Like, you need depth at those positions because injuries happen all the time. When you got big 300-pound guys, slugging on each other and pushing each other and stepping on each other's ankles and calves, you have injuries. And so you need depth in those positions, or you end up in a position like Pittsburgh where you got a rookie horrible offensive line to start the year because nobody's really played much.
Yep. So next up, I have the Kansas City Chiefs losing in the AFC Championship game. 30th overall, I have them selecting David Ojabo, linebacker out of Michigan. And he's kind of more of an edge rusher, but he does play kind of an outside linebacker role. To be honest with you, he fell to me just because I kind of forgot about it, and there were so many other players that I looked at and were like, oh yeah, he fits really well here. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs could benefit from getting a linebacker, edge rusher type of guy on that team. And they are just looking at this going like, oh wow, like this guy was able to fall. And I don't necessarily think this is too far out. This guy could go anywhere from 15 to 30. Because there are so many good players, and necessarily there's going to be teams out there, like what we said, they're not going for the best player available, they're going for need, and this guy just kind of gets passed on. We see it every year with a phenomenal prospect player that they just end up dropping, and teams just kind of forget about him, and I think the Chiefs are going to look at this guy and go, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, that would be a good steal for them for sure.
Do I think he's going to make it to the Chiefs? I don't know. But it's interesting to see, though.
Exactly, yeah.
So moving into the Super Bowl, I have the Tennessee Titans ultimately losing the Super Bowl game. 31st overall, I have them selecting DeMarvin Leal, defensive lineman, Texas A&M. This guy is phenomenal at the defensive line. He can play D-tackle. He can play defensive end. He is going to be massive for that defense moving forward. I wanted to kind of give the Titans maybe a little bit extra offensive lineman help. There was just no one I felt that was valuable enough for them at this position. And so I looked at my best player available. It was Lean. I had to give him to him just to continue to help that phenomenal defense just get even better.
Yep, that makes sense.
And obviously, I have my Super Bowl winners. I can't bet against Tom Brady until it proves me wrong. I have them selecting David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue. This is one of those picks that might be a little interesting to some people, but I look at it in the sense of the Bucks. They're gonna need a new young wide receiver because chances are they're going to lose one or two of their wide receivers to free agency just because they can't afford them.
Yep.
Like they're gonna lose Chris Godwin to wherever he goes, and I think David Bell would be a nice little replacement. Obviously, they have Mike Evans. He's not going anywhere. This is going to be a nice young player for him. And a nice young target for Tom Brady for the next 20 years because, let's be honest, Tom Brady's going to play until he dies.
Right? Yeah, it's at the point now. I saw a funny meme of people saying he should just start signing 1-year contracts with teams that have never won a Super Bowl and just go win all these teams a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Then he'd be the GOAT of the entire league at that point.
Yep. So we are not done the mock draft because I actually have 3 more teams of the teams that didn't get to pick in the first round. There's 4 teams that don't pick in the first round, but the Rams don't have any picks until like the 3rd or 4th round, and I'm not really looking that far into the draft going like, yes, they're going to pick this guy because I clearly know what's going to happen at pick 120.
Right.
So with the first pick moving forward, the Chicago Bears 39th, I have them selecting Darian Kinnard, tackle out of Kentucky. The Bears have 2 young tackle prospects in Larry Borum and why am I forgetting my own guy's name? I was really excited about him last year too, but they have 2 young guys there. I could see one of those guys potentially being moved into the or kind of the interior offensive line, but they need to protect Fields. The Bears desperately need to protect Fields, and going out and getting more offensive line help here is good. I could see them going corner here, but getting that offensive lineman help is just more important in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean that's where your Bears struggle was scoring points this year, and so they definitely need to get some more protection for Fields. And I mean, in reality, you guys should be getting Khalil Mack back next year, so that will really boost that defense.
Agreed, and he's going to be healthy because he wasn't healthy at all, even when he was playing. So next up, we have the Seahawks with the 41st pick. This is their first pick in the draft. I have them selecting Jermaine Johnson, the third edge rusher out of Florida State. You can go a lot of different places with this pick for the Seahawks, but at the moment, I just looked at Johnson and said he's kind of the best available player kind of around this area. There's a lot of good edge rushers going to be going in that top half of the second round. The Seahawks might as well go get a guy that potentially could be a star for him moving forward.
Yep. Yeah, the Seahawks have a lot of question marks that they need to fill, so just about anything would be a good pick for them there.
Yep. And with the last pick for this kind of mock draft scenario, the Colts 47th overall, I have them selecting Sam Howell, quarterback out of North Carolina. You're not moving forward with Carson Wentz. You're not.
No.
And even if he is going to be your quarterback for the first game of the season, he's not going to be reliable at the end of the year. You might as well get the guy that is ultimately going to replace him. And Howell, he's kind of, at the beginning of the year, he was my number 2 pick. Obviously, he's fallen down. He hasn't had that year that a lot of people expected him to have, but I still think he is capable enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. You just got to give him a little bit more time, put him in a system that will use him properly, and this will be a phenomenal pick for them. And obviously, you're moving away from Carson Wentz, who all you had to do was beat Jacksonville, and you were in the playoffs, and you couldn't beat Jacksonville.
Yep.
So, yeah. That is my first mock draft of the year.
Yeah, if he falls that far, that's a good pick for them. I don't think he falls that far, though.
I have to agree with you. I don't think he falls that far to them as well, but we will see.
Because we discussed teams like the Saints that need help there. The Seahawks could need help there if Russell Wilson goes elsewhere.
Yep. It is very, very interesting to see moving forward. But yeah, with all those guys, none of this is certain. I could be looking at the first 3 picks and going, the Jags select Kyle Hamilton They could be selecting someone completely random for all I know, for all I care. This is more just fun, but obviously we're not going to get into really serious mock drafts until probably about 2 weeks out of the draft, because then we're going to obviously see the combine, we're going to see all the pro days. We need to see all that information moving forward.
Yeah, we're looking more end of March, early April for when that's really going to start to solidify.
Yep. So now kind of moving into the last kind of conversation for us today, we're going to be very similar to what we did with the divisional or the wild card round. We're going to be talking about each of the playoff games. First game up this weekend is the Cincinnati Bengals going into Tennessee to face the Titans. Obviously, looking at the mock draft, we saw which team I thought was going to win, and I chose the Tennessee Titans, but I want to know your thoughts, Sterling.
I agree. I think this is going to be a really good game. You got a really high-powered offense against a brilliantly defensive-minded coach. You know, it's almost similar to what happened with the Bills and the Patriots last week, though I think it's going to be a lot closer this game. Yeah, it's tough to say. If Derrick Henry can come out and dominate on the ground like he does so well, then the Titans are just going to run away with it. They're going to chew up the clock. They're going to wear down that Cincinnati defense, and they're just going to walk away with a nice mid to low scoring game. You know, I'm thinking 21-17 is where the Titans will be able to win the game. If it starts getting out of control and becomes a bit of a shootout and they start letting Joe Burrow throw down the field to chase, that's where the Bengals could run away with it. You know, and if the Bengals are looking at winning, they're probably going to have to score 30, 35 points. But
Yep.
I think it's going to be 21-17 for the Titans.
Yeah, getting Derrick Henry back was obviously going to be massive for the Tennessee Titans. And if Derrick Henry wants to run 230 yards today and put up 3 scores on the ground, he's going to do that.
Is he physically able, though? That's the question.
That is the question. He has a metal plate in his foot with a bunch of screws in it. So is he gonna be the same Derrick Henry? The only way that I see the Cincinnati Bengals winning this game is if they completely stop Derrick Henry. I think their offense is going to be able to do exactly what they want them to do. It's just, is Tennessee going to be even allowing the Bengals offense to do what they need to do? That's my big thing. And you know what? I'll say this right now. If the Cincinnati Bengals win this game today, I will instantly buy a Joe Burrow jersey.
That doesn't surprise me. With how much you love Burrow, they could lose today and you still might buy one.
Yep. But what I'm saying is that if they win this game today, it's not even going to be a question. It is being shipped to my house within the hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is one of those things where I do ultimately think the Titans, obviously they're the best team in the AFC. Just getting Henry back is just so massive for them, and they've just been able to get healthy.
They're also the most overlooked team in this playoffs. You know, they're a number one team that everybody's discounting.
I feel like a lot of people forgot about them over the wild card weekend. And you're looking at it going like, no, there's a reason that they're not playing. It's because they are so good without Derrick Henry for, it felt like, the entire last half of the season. They were still winning games and being a really, really good team. Now that they get him back and they've been getting healthy, Julio Jones for the first time hasn't missed snaps in practice all year.
Right? Which could be a bit of a wild card for them. Because all of a sudden, Tannehill has a real big target that he can throw it to.
Yep.
If they manage to shut down Derrick Henry.
Yep.
You know, or if they key in on him too much, that's going to create some separation for Julio Jones against those corners.
Yes. Yes. But this should be a phenomenal game. I think the Bengals are going to keep it somewhat close. I really do, and I hope that, because I do want to see the Bengals end up winning the Super Bowl. Like, that is my team that I'm rooting for the remainder of the playoffs, but it is one of those things where I don't think they're going to get past the Titans. I think they're just too much of a juggernaut right now. Obviously, especially going into Tennessee to play the Titans there, that's just going to give the Titans even more.
It's like you're antagonizing me and trying to convince me to cheer for the Packers.
Uh,
Jumping on the Bungles bandwagon. Disappointing.
Joe Burrow, man, like I said, he is the player that I am rooting for the most in the NFL right now. My favorite player is Burrow. He's even more so than most people look at me like. Wouldn't you consider Fields your player? Nope.
No.
If the Bears organization said to me today that they are swapping Fields for Burrow, I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah. Who
go,
else do you want?
go,
Here, take Mac too.
yeah, yeah. You want to take Mac Smith? I don't care if you're gonna bring in Burrow. Yes, please.
No, I agree. He is a generational talent. He is phenomenal. He's probably one of the only guys that's really going to be able to give Patrick Mahomes a run for his money when it comes to stats over the next decade.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, looking to the later game today, we have the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, everyone saw I had the 49ers taking this game over the Packers, but I want to hear yours.
I think so too. Honestly, I think the Packers are the number one team that ends up losing in this divisional round. Aaron Rodgers, as good as he is, with Devontae Adams and putting up points like they are, their defense is lacking, and they're kind of one-dimensional. And going up against this Niners team, which has an excellent defense, as we saw last week against the Cowboys, they were just holding them in check the whole game. And Jimmy G, he didn't have a great game last week. I think he's going to come out this week and do much better. The only reason the Packers might be able to pull this out is the weather factor. It's in Lambeau Field. It's going to be cold, and that hand of Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be hurting because of that cold.
Yep.
So I think it is possible the Packers could pull this out, but yeah, my vote's going towards the 49ers. I think the 49ers are on a roll. And I think they're going to find a way to get it done against the Packers.
Yeah.
It's one of those games with two excellent quarterbacks. Whichever one of them has the ball last is going to be the one that wins the game.
The only thing I would disagree with you on that is saying both teams have excellent quarterbacks. I think Jimmy G is just a serviceable quarterback. He is without a doubt your middle of the road average quarterback, but he's playing on a team that can make him look good. Um,
Yeah, okay. I would agree middle of the range when it comes to his physical abilities, but as far as his intelligence goes, he is one of the smarter quarterbacks out there. He understands the game very well, and he's really good at managing the clock.
yeah, and with this game, it was funny enough because Matt LaFleur, this week they asked, like, obviously, what do you think about the 49ers Cowboys games? He goes, we weren't preparing for the Cowboys. We were preparing for the 49ers, which I thought was pretty funny because even teams in the league know it's like, it's the Cowboys in the playoffs. Why would we prepare for them moving forward? They're not
Oh,
going to,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have to look at the 49ers and say they do have the better defense, and I think especially in cold weather games, defense plays that much more importance, and when you do have the better defense, you are typically the better team. And
Yeah.
the 49ers, they are a run first team. Obviously, when we play Madden, you get to see how I run my team, and it's very similar to the 49ers. Run the ball, and let your quarterback make good decisions. And
Yep.
you also have George Kittle, who is a Bears fan. He was always a Bears fan growing up. He hates the Packers. He wants to dominate the Packers, and so we could see, Kittle have himself a good game too here in Lambeau.
Well, and not even necessarily a good statistical game. The way they've been utilizing him is perfect for a big, strong tight end like he is. They're using him as a blocker,
Mm-hmm.
which is why that run game has become so dominant for them because they've got that extra guy in there that's able to get to the second row and still be throwing those blocks. He's knocking those linebackers down. He's getting to the safeties and throwing blocks. And that is what's key for those big runs for the Niners. And hey, if they manage to shut that down, then there's nothing stopping an athletic guy like George Kittle from rolling off of one of these blocks into open field across the middle for Jimmy G to hit nice and easily.
Yep, and that's just the thing with Kittle is that like he is so good at getting open. So if he can get open, we've seen these two have a lot of really amazing chemistry over the last couple of years. He just throws the ball and let Kittle do what he has to do. So moving over to the next game, these are the games tomorrow. 1 o'clock, we have the Rams and Buccaneers. Let's hear it.
I think this is going to be much like the Eagles and Buccaneers last week. We're not really going to give the Rams much of a chance. It's in Tampa Bay. This week, I do believe they actually do have Leonard Fournette back. We thought they were going to last week, and they didn't. Uh, that's going to be a deal breaker for them. They're going to wear down this LA defense. They're not going to give Matt Stafford a lot of time to be out there making these big flashy plays to OBJ and to all of his other receiving options, Cooper Kupp and everything. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers make short work of the LA Rams.
I think this is going to be a closer game than what we saw from the Bucks and Eagles, just because I do think the Rams are a better team than the Eagles. But yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you too much there. If they get Leonard Fournette back, this team is going to be very, very difficult to stop. They're just going to be physical against the Rams. And like I've said all along, you do not bet against Tom Brady. At the end of
No.
the day, what you do not do is bet against him. And if you're playing Tom Brady when he has home field advantage, regardless if it's Tampa Bay or New England, he just seems to be better in the playoffs. He's always at his best. And again, what we've said about Sean McVay, what have we been saying
Yep.
about him all year, is that he builds a phenomenal game plan going into the week. But if you can get him off of that game plan, he struggles to adjust. And Bruce Arians can adjust to the game as it moves forward. And I think this is going to be more of a game of seeing what the coaches are capable of doing as opposed to what the quarterbacks and what the teams are capable of doing. Because I think Arians will look and go, okay, well, what are the things that we need to do? We need to make sure Aaron Donald does not touch Tom Brady. So we are going to focus on making sure he doesn't get there. We're going to run the ball a lot and force them to move back. And then once we're getting them to get a little bit less aggressive from the passing game, we're going to hit them over the top with a lot of those phenomenal wide receivers that the Bucks have. And I really do think that is going to be the game plan. It's not going to be Brady versus Stafford. It's going to be Arians versus McVay. And
I
if
agree
I'm betting,
completely.
I'm taking Arians over McVay any single day of the week.
Well, yeah, because Bruce Arians approaches the game like he's playing chess, and Sean McVay is playing checkers.
Yeah.
And I agree completely. And Bruce Arians is one of the best at reverse engineering a game plan of an opponent.
Yeah.
He will go into practices all week, and he is really good at anticipating what the other coach is going to be bringing at the guys and preparing them for that first half. And that's why you see so often the Buccaneers just be lights out in that first quarter.
Yeah. And you know what? The Bucks have had some bad games this year, but they also had the
Yep.
same thing last year where they were 11-5. People were kind of looking at them like, "Oh, okay, what's the real Bucks team we're going to see?" I think now that we're in the playoffs, we saw exactly what we saw last year where the Buccaneers were dialed in every single play. Last year they were just dominant. I think we're going to see the same thing this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's that Tom Brady just he enters a new level when it gets to the playoffs.
Yeah, and then moving into the final game of this divisional round weekend, we have the Buffalo Bills taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, I do think this is going to be the best game of the week. This is going to be the one that everyone is going to be wanting to watch because we have two electric quarterbacks playing. And I hate that I almost vomited saying that because I had to include Josh Allen in that category of electric. But last week, throwing those 5 touchdowns, just not doing anything wrong. I think you kind of got to say that he played fairly well last week.
He did play very well, and yeah, I think this is going to be the most exciting of the four games. Everything else, it's going to be a battle between the coaches or a battle between the defenses. This is going to be just quarterback versus quarterback, head to head. Who has the most passing yards? Who's got the better targets? Who is running the better route? It's going to be a shootout. As I said earlier in the program, I think this is going to be one of those games that could potentially set a record for points scored in a playoff game.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this really could be a situation of where we are going to see, like there was a couple of years ago where we saw the Rams, and I'm pretty sure it was the Chiefs, set like 40, it was like 52 to like 50 in the game. And I think you could very easily see something like that happening this week.
I think so, yeah.
The Bills, they are riding high off of what they were capable of doing to the Patriots, but we have seen them struggle in some of these really tough games. When I look back at that Buffalo Bills game last week, it was 20 years of just being shit kicked by a team that they just needed to get off their chest. They broke through that barrier, and now they're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, who are a very different breed, who are a very different monster. And it's going, you have Patrick Mahomes playing with all of his swagger, going like, okay, yeah, yeah, you score a touchdown, I score a touchdown. You score a touchdown, I'll go score a touchdown. It's going to be one of those things going like, I know every single drive I'm going to go out there and get points, but can you? And that's exactly what he's saying to the Buffalo Bills. And I
Yep.
know the Bills have themselves a good defense, but and a lot of people are going to discount the Chiefs defense, but the last half of the year they were, I don't know if you would consider them top 10, but they were damn close to being a top 10 unit that last stretch of the year. And I do think they are going to play really, really well. Obviously, we didn't really get to see a phenomenal benchmark last week against the Steelers. I hate to say it, but yeah.
Well, they were going up against one of the worst offenses and the worst offense in the playoff.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't surprising. And I could be mistaken, but I believe after their horrific start to the season, in the final 6 or 7 weeks, the Chiefs were actually the number one defense in the league.
You know what, they very well might have been that number one defense in the league. I would need to fully look at the stats there, but yeah, it was, they improve like that overnight. And if you look
Yes.
back at the year that they ended up winning the Super Bowl, they had a very similar thing happen of where there, a lot of people said their defense isn't good enough to take them to the Super Bowl, and as soon as they got to the playoffs, they were the best defense there.
Yep.
And so this is
See,
going
and
to be a fun game to watch.
it will be. The difference between the two teams here, though, is really the Bills could jump out in front, and they need to stay on the gas because the Chiefs will come back.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like if the opposite happens, if the Chiefs come out and they score two quick touchdowns and they get up 14-0, we are going to see that Buffalo Bills offense collapse. And
Yeah.
that is where Josh Allen will start making mistakes that Patrick Mahomes would not.
Yeah. Well,
And so it
we've seen
really
it.
is very much Josh Allen needs to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes, whereas Pat Mahomes just needs to play his own game.
Yeah. And there's really only one quarterback that I can say in the league that I'm confident, Patrick Mahomes. He's just not on the same level, and we saw him lose to him in the Super Bowl last year, and that's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Other than that, if I'm looking at a quarterback versus quarterback matchup, I'm taking Mahomes every single time unless it's against Tom Brady.
And the only reason for that is the 15 years experience that he's got over.
And the fact that you do not bet against Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, though. You give Patrick Mahomes another 10 years of experience,
He
we
might
could
be
be
that
saying
same
the same
level.
thing about him.
Yeah.
You don't bet against Patrick Mahomes.
Yep. And again, we've seen Mahomes in these big pressure games not really struggle. Obviously, the year that he won the Super Bowl, he wasn't the best that he's ever been. And obviously, in last year's Super Bowl, the team was just so hurt up
So
front.
many injuries.
So many injuries that it was tough for him to do a whole lot, but he was still making something out of nothing a lot of the times. And with Josh Allen, we've seen him struggle in some of these big games. Obviously, last week was a massive game for them, but like what I was saying earlier, that was 20 years of just getting shit kicked, and all that rage and frustration finally just came out and said, no, today is not the day.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be real here. We've mentioned a couple of quarterbacks and a couple of teams throughout the program today that have had their struggles throughout the year. This was one of those seasons. Every single team in the NFL has had those really deep dives of very poor play for several weeks.
Yep.
And so this could happen to any one of these teams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers could completely fall apart. We don't know. This is one of the more unpredictable years that we've seen in recent playoff history.
Yep. Yeah. So for myself, my game of the week is obviously going to be that Buffalo Bills Kansas City Chiefs game. It is it is going to be an absolute shootout. I'm kind of curious to know. I feel you are very similar to me, and that's going to be your game of the week. But I'm kind
Yeah.
of wondering, what do you think is going to be the letdown of the week?
The letdown of the week,
The
I think,
letdown
is
game of the
going.
week.
I mean, it's tough to say. Like, I'm not really looking forward to the letdown of the week. Will be if the Bengals blow out the Titans. You know, if the Bengals somehow manage to just destroy the Titans completely, that'll be my letdown of the week.
Yep. Well, I
Yeah,
think for
but
myself, the more what I was saying there is, what do you think is going to be the game that we just kind of look at and go, "Oh, that was not worth watching."
oh, Tampa Bay and LA, I probably won't watch it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna agree with you on that. Um, I'm going to definitely be watching that Cincinnati Bengals Tennessee Titans game, which is going to be starting here in the next 25 minutes.
Yep.
Um, but that I'm really excited to watch that game. But I think that's probably going to be one of those games that's going to be, it should be fun to watch, but it could very easily turn into a blowout for the Titans.
See, and I don't think so. I think if it's a blowout, it's Cincinnati that's blowing out. I don't think that Tennessee has the offensive firepower to blow out a team. At least not in the playoffs. You know, if we're talking playing the Texans, then sure, they can blow out the Texans. But I don't think any of these teams in the playoffs, they're going to be looking at a potential blowout. They need to be looking at fundamentals and time of possession. That is how the Tennessee Titans or the San Francisco 49ers win a Super Bowl this year, is time of possession.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? We did kind of talk about this a little bit, but we didn't really fully go into it. But how healthy is Derrick Henry? Obviously, he played really, or obviously he's been getting healthy for weeks and weeks and weeks. But is he gonna be the same player that we initially saw from him?
I don't think he will be, because I mean, even during all this rehab, you can't be lifting the weights like you were. You know, you can't be running your sprints like you were. You can't be working all your cardio and everything. So I think he's going to be down a step, and I don't think he's going to have as much upper body strength. So I don't think we're going to see a stiff arm of him throwing a guy across the field. It's possible. You know, it may still happen, but I don't think it's as likely. I think we see a lot more conservative running from him. You know, a lot more inside, just trying to get that 3, 4, 5 yards per run, and him not really breaking anything massive unless it's a broken play on the defensive side. You know, I don't think he creates the big play. I think Cincinnati allows the big play, if that makes sense.
I hear you. And you know what? Looking at what happened last week, Cincinnati did give a couple of those big plays to the Raiders, but again, the Raiders just couldn't compete with the offense of the Bengals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is all the talking points that we've had today. I want to thank everyone for coming out and hanging out with us today. Hopefully you all enjoy divisional weekend. We are going to be back next week, same time, same place. I'm Brendon. This is Sterling. Thank you all for coming out.
Have a good weekend.